Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Road Runners Unfiltered. We are live in the studio today. I got my man David Glasco in the studio. Welcome to Road Runners Unfiltered, my brother.
What's happening, man?
You're no stranger to this. A lot to talk about. We are 24 hours removed from Texas State. And so UTSA wins 20-13. What was your overall assessment?
I know we had talked on what's the thing called on Twitter? Is it Spaces? We talked on Spaces earlier in the week, and it pretty much went down how I predicted. I thought we would win, and I thought it would be a close game. Mm-hmm. It was a whole lot more dramatic with injuries and stuff, which I'm sure we're gonna talk about in a little bit. But it kind of went how I expected. High intensity game, a lot of energy. It's a rivalry game, so. It pretty much ended how I expected.
Yeah, for whatever reason, and people came for me on YouTube for this, but and they were right to check me on this, but the games against Texas State are normally close. We blew them out one time. But I guess when I was speaking to it being a cakewalk against them, to me, I feel like we go in thinking it's Texas State. There's no way they can beat us.
Right.
They're not on our level. They have not been on our level. So the feeling going into the game is always, are we going to run over them? Mm-hmm. And I was worried when the Knicks was in here, we was being pretty disrespectful about their chances. If I'm just being honest, we were being pretty disrespectful about their chances. And I got scared whenever I seen what they did against Baylor.
Right.
And Anis and I was talking after that. I was like, yo, could you imagine? Because I put that direct clip out on Twitter of us just shitting on Texas State. And I was like, oh, my God, they're going to kill us. And they're going to grab that. They're going to grab that and make a mockery of everything we were saying. And, but I think a lot of my hesitation came from Texas State and their performance against Baylor. And then UTSA's performance against Houston not being as good. So, my overall assessment of this particular game against Texas State is that, we were the better team, but, we didn't execute well at all. There was a lot of issues that showed itself, and it's kind of showing that, for example, I don't think our offensive coordinator is doing a great job, especially on third down and some of these situational downs. Just, I don't know, just some of these key plays, I always find myself questioning the call. I think on third down, I'm frustrated because Frank is running for his life every third down. And it's there's two things that are happening. That's either a play call from the OC that's just not good, or our receivers are not getting separation.
Right.
Or and it could be Frank not, because I don't think Frank is right now as sharp as we expect him. And I know he's been battling injuries and stuff like that, and we'll get into that as well. But, I feel like we are a team right now that's in a rocky situation to where it's if Frank goes away, what offense would we have, right? So
and that's the thing. I think that this new offensive coordinator, I think he's trying to, and he's having a hard time. He's struggling to find an identity on the offense. When I say that, I mean you have your guys who are your playmakers, and you got to get the athletes in space.
Right.
That's really a simple way of saying it. But, you got to be are we going to be Tennessee Titans, a run-heavy team that's going to rely on Derrick Henry, for example? Or are we going to be the Chiefs, who we got Patrick Mahomes back there, he can air it out, but we have all these other weapons. Let's just get the ball to him. You got to find some type of offensive identity. Right now, we do not have that. It's we're just out there. It's okay, I think this is the situation. I think this is the best play. We're kind of confused. And thank God we were able to get out of this last game with a win, but it's hard. And I'm a little worried now because our offensive line was struggling last game, especially with old boy getting hurt. So, that's going to be something we're going to have to take into consideration going forward, too. It's going to be tough, but in my humble opinion, I think the way that we can remedy or mitigate some of this damage, we need to do, if we're going to be a passing team, we need to do quick throws.
Right.
It'll be three-step drops, quick slants, quick outs. It needs to be something to where Frank ain't holding on to the ball a lot, so he ain't scrambling for his life. And with that offensive line now being injured, something to where he can hurry up and get the ball out of his hands. Will Stein, I know people tire me bigging him up, but I love Will Stein. Will Stein, who's now the OC at Oregon, he was great at that.
Right.
He knew when the situation was like, yeah, this team, they might be bet on the D-line, beating us up. Let's hurry up and get the ball out the hands. That way we can get the ball to the playmakers. And we had 3 great receivers at the time. Now we're going to have 2 when Clark gets back. They can make something happen when you get them the ball. We just got to get it to them fast.
Yeah, I agree with that, too. That was one of the things I pointed out on Twitter. I felt like we weren't adjusting well. Like, for example, Texas State decided to blitz us, right? Mm-hmm. We're still doing play action. It's clear. Yeah. It's clear whenever they're blitzing us, they're coming. It's a beeline straight at Frank, and it's kind of the situation of it. It's kind of a situation where we got to be able to see that, adjust, and say, okay, well, if we can't get if play action is getting Frank hit all the time, and they are eating up our run game and Frank's ability to run too, let's get the ball out to the flats quickly to make them say, okay, well, let's quit. Let's not necessarily blitz, because if you hit one of them bubble screens whenever they're sending so much pressure, if we get a good block and the receiver makes somebody miss, we got a first down at minimum, right? Yeah. So like, I'm just wondering at what point are we going to make in-game adjustments? Or are we just going to wait until we fail for a whole quarter in the particular, like, I mean, I don't know. How many possessions do you give it to where, like, you see something's not working, oh, now I got to adjust? I feel like we just were not doing that for whatever reason, and it's taking us too long. Like, for example, Texas State, they made an adjustment earlier in the game that I was pointing out on Twitter as well. They seen that our defensive line was dominating them in the trenches. Mm-hmm. So guess what they did? They stopped. It's exactly what UTSA didn't do, to be honest. They stopped running the ball in the interior, and when they did run the ball, it was on the perimeter, and they start doing quick game. They start, dropping back and pass. They start seeing that, oh, we're having some success against their secondary. Let's drop back and pass. That quarterback's not bad. They made some plays, and they start really building some momentum on that. At the end of the first half, and I'm like, look at that. Even Texas State, they made an adjustment after a few drives, but seeing them make the adjustment before us, that's the thing that worries me, because we're gonna play a lot more teams better than Texas State.
Yeah, but it's like we talked about earlier in the week. That I was right, by the way. That coach is the one from UIW, from Incarnate Word, and I knew that's what had me worried. When I figured that out, I was not surprised that they beat Baylor. He's a hell of a coach. He's young too. He's only 34.
Yeah.
And so, they made adjustments, but you can correct me if I'm wrong. When I was looking at the game, I didn't see a bunch of audibles and checking out by Frank.
Nah.
So that's something that has to change, because offensive coordinators, they had a game plan. They sometimes they'll be like, okay, they'll send a play in the huddle. This is the play, run it. Or sometimes they'll be like, if you see this, check out of it and run this. Right. We need to do, in my opinion, some more of that. Like you said, like if we have a play action, but these dudes is bringing these linebackers in the box, and you see it's an obvious blitz, or you see that corner creeping in, and safety ain't going to come over the top, and he's coming. We need to check out of it to a quick screen, something. But that's on the OC. He gotta give them that option, or else them kids ain't going to know what to do.
That too, but it's also a direct challenge to our receivers. It's like, all right, if they're going to blitz like that, they challenging all the receivers on the outside.
You got to win your one-on-one.
Yeah. And it's like, you wouldn't dare do that last year with J.T. Clark, Zakari Franklin, and Joshua Cephas. You couldn't afford to do that. And now it's like, we shouldn't be letting folks off the hook for that now. Like, the people that, like, we're UTSA, we're a college that can attract primetime talent now, because we have primetime talent. How are we in a situation where we don't have receivers that's consistently winning their one-on-ones? Joshua Cephas did his thing. And shout out to Taiki Kellogg. He made a few big catches.
I like him.
Which was huge. We need that big presence that can go up and catch a moss ball downfield. So he did some good things as well. But, like, they're not getting enough separation to where Frank is comfortable getting them the ball. That's the thing. Half the time it's like, not necessarily about on one individual play can this receiver get open. are you getting open enough for your quarterback to have the confidence to look your way and give you the ball? That's what I feel like we're lacking right now. Like, it really showed itself to me outside. So anyway, I think right now, just talking about the offense in general, it's just been bad through 2 games. And I didn't even though we won, like sometimes you will see an offense start to get a groove on in the second half. Bro, we didn't really get a groove on at all. So I didn't see anything that's going to make me feel good about us going into next week's game from our offense to think that they're going to improve at all. Like, I don't know, man. I'm worried.
I'm not going to be as harsh as you and say bad. It's been weird. It's been very, very odd watching. I think that would be the term I would use. It's just like you said, that second half was kind of, it was just odd. Like, it just, stuff looked off. It didn't look like there was chemistry all the way. It looked a little odd. I mean, I don't really even know how to pinpoint it, but even with the point you bring up about the separation, it gets more crucial when you see that your quarterback is hurt or hobbling.
Right.
Because now it's like you have to help your quarterback. Now it's like even those 50-50 balls, you have to come down with them. Those close catches, like you have to do everything in your power to help your quarterback. So, and I saw a little bit of that. Shout out to number 11. What's his name? I don't know how to pronounce his name.
That's Ola Kellogg.
Ogo Kellogg.
Yeah.
That's such a dope last name. Yeah. But yeah, shout out to him. He made some big plays. Cephas, like you said, probably the best security blanket in the nation right now. But it's just odd. I don't even know what to pinpoint the exact issue.
When I call it bad, the reason I say bad is because it's relative to what we've been. We've been an offensive powerhouse for the last 2 seasons. Mm-hmm. So it's like when you compare it to that, and you do have Frank Harris, and we do have a running back who's I believe a freshman All-American. I know he was obviously freshman All-Conference, but I think he was freshman All-America team also. When you do have that, and then you still do have a Joshua Cephas, like you got some weapons to where maybe we're not at the level that we were last year because we had Zachary Franklin, we had a healthy JT Clark for the first half of the season. But we should still be able to get some production out of I don't know, like 14 points in game 1 and then 20 in game 2 against a lesser defense. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, it should be more.
Yeah, and then to kind of touch on the point where you talked about the offensive line earlier, bro. That damn defensive end on that team with no accessories.
Just the dude, my boy.
Yeah, dude. Hey,
it was clean.
Hey,
I'm not gonna lie.
His celebration was clean. That's what was pissing me off. I was like, bro. I'm like, he's doing this shit. Like, oh my god. But yeah, bro. Like, I mean, he was just whooping ass. He was just, I mean, dude, there was I think it was sometime in the third or maybe fourth quarter. They did a 3-man rush, dropped everybody back, and he whooped our right tackle's ass and sacked Frank. I said a 3-man rush? What are we doing? Anyway, moving on. I want to ask you about your assessment of the running backs over the last 2 weeks. Obviously, being a running back yourself, like I would say give them a grade thus far in the season.
So far in the season, B+.
Okay.
I say B+. I think Barnes, I'm a fan of his. I'm a fan of how hard he runs.
Yeah.
The kid runs hard, man. And I always love a running back. You know me, I was a North and South running back. I wasn't the most elusive and all that. But, when I see a North and South running back running hard, I'm always a fan. I think as a unit, we were talking before we cut the mics on, there was a run where I believe it was Henry had missed a wide open hole that should have been at least a 10-yard run that ended up being 3. But I mean, that type of stuff happens. Yeah. But I could just tell it's a little peeve of mine because I could just tell I could tell he was overthinking it. You know, when the play is supposed to hit somewhere and it's designed to hit somewhere, which it doesn't always. 9 times out of 10, it doesn't happen that way. But when you have a hole that big and you're thinking too much, it's just a little pet peeve of mine. But besides that, that and the fumbling irks me, dog. Yeah. I can't.
I mean, he got straight up stripped. The dude said, "Give me that shit."
The dude was reaching and it was a great run. That's the thing that's more frustrating about it. It was a great run and he just got.
Yeah.
He got. But And, that fumble was crucial because they ended up scoring off of that drive. Yeah. So, stuff like that, it's stuff that a lot of people don't talk about, but like I always say, the little things ain't really the little things because they really the big things.
Right.
Having it high and tight, putting two hands over it when you're in traffic, et cetera, anticipating your holes, stuff like that. But all in all, I think they've been – I might say so far, in my opinion, on the offense, they might have been the best thus far throughout these last two games as far as position groups are concerned.
I agree with that, actually. I hadn't even thought about that. That's a fair assessment. I think they did really good against Houston. I think Kavorian Barnes, he was just great against that team, but he only touched the ball 16 times.
Yeah,
so it's I'm glad that – the OC was like, okay, well, we obviously got to get him the ball because he had 26 carries this game. But, Kavorian Barnes is good. I'd say if I had to give them a grade, I think B+ is a good one because I probably would have gave the running backs an A- or so against Houston. I think they were good yesterday, but they could have been better. There was a couple of things we was talking about this before we cut the mics on as well. There was a couple of runs even from Kavorian Barnes that I expected of him to break the tackle or because there was a couple of runs where it was like you had one man to beat before you're breaking for 10 plus yards. Mm-hmm. Beat that one man, bro. Right. You're talented enough to do that. I want to also before we go to the defensive side of the ball. What do you think the coordinator needs to change outside of the quick game stuff? Like in terms of because you talked about identity, and I think that's a good point. I hadn't even thought about that. We don't have an identity on the offense. I think last year our identity was clear. We had arguably the best receiving core in the nation.
Right.
And we kind of set up everything off them, which – that opened up Frank. That gave him plenty of options. That opened up our running game. It played a huge, role in our running game having success because you couldn't stuff the box when you got those three on the outside. So now that we don't have that and we are a different team, what kind of makeup should our offensive coordinator what kind of makeup should he, I guess, gear toward in terms of finding an identity for the offense?
I think even I believe this to be true in life. I believe that if you are refusing to adjust, it's going to cost you in anything. So just to give people a rundown of how offensive teams plan for the week, you have a game plan going into the game. You see this defense usually does A, B, and C. Right. So your game plan that week at practice is this is what they do, this is what we're going to do. Right. Now, when you get in the game, they might do something totally different. It happens sometimes. It happens more than not, actually. Some teams are stuck in their ways and they just do whatever it is. But I think the OC needs to do a better job of being attentive of what the defense is actually doing at that moment and just be like, you know what? We might not have put emphasis on this in practice, but we have enough good athletes. We have an All-American in the backfield. We have a dude at quarterback that's been mature, been there for a long time, and we got great receivers. And I think we need to start utilizing our tight ends more, too, in the passing game, if I'm being honest. Yes. So we have talent at these positions. These dudes is good enough to go out there and let's run some play on the fly that we probably didn't rep as much that week at practice, but – these dudes are good enough athletes to get it done, and let's just adjust to what's happening in the moment. I just think the OC needs to do a better job of adjusting to what's happening in the moment and being more aware and attentive of that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's a good point about the tight ends, too. Big Oscar. I love Big Oscar, bro. Get him the rock. And then we got this new kid.
That number 88? Yeah, I like him, too.
Sorry, bro, I don't have your name right now, but, he's legit. He showed himself in the Houston game. He made a catch or two yesterday. So, I think that's a good point. Moving on to the defensive side of the ball, I'll speak to some of this. I feel like the defense has saved our ass for 2 games. I think they're the reason the game against Houston was close. Mm-hmm. Because Houston had some success, but, our offense was so bad and we was turning the ball over a lot against Houston. Whereas, like, you never, whenever you turn the ball over like that, you never know what the score can be, especially if the other team take care of the ball themselves. You know what I'm saying? So I think defensively we've been pretty good. Dude, our front seven, in particularly the D-line.
Monsters.
Bro.
Monsters.
They literally dominated the game yesterday without – all you guys are the play of the game, by the way. Just the D-line, y'all got play of the game status. But I felt like the secondary, and I'm always hard on the secondary than most, but I feel like they got challenged early in the game yesterday, and they was not. When they finally start really getting challenged, I feel like they didn't respond well. There was two passes in particular where they ran switch routes on the outside, right? And the outside receiver, whenever he switched in, he ran up the seam. He didn't run a post, but he ran like a skinny seam route. And they got behind our defense multiple times. Yeah. And one time it would have been, I think it was three times. There was one time where Finley overthrew the guy. Yeah. And if he would have caught it, it would have been a touchdown. There was another time where I think it was a third down, and they ran the same concept. It was a little different, but it was the same concept. Finley hit the guy right in the chest with the ball, and he just dropped it. So we got lucky there. And then there was the other one where the receiver ended up getting hurt. He went up for the one-hand catch. But he was wide open.
And hit him hit him at the last second.
Yeah. And he dropped. He didn't catch the ball, but he was wide open. If he had a better pass, it's a touchdown.
There was a couple of those.
That's what I'm saying. So like we were very fortunate to not get exposed. And I get it. It's football. They're going to be drops, but we're also going to see teams later in the year, especially once we get in the conference. They're going to go look at that film, and you as an offense knows, hey, you know what? They're not good at covering this. Yep. We this guy, this particular player is late at coming over and addressing the seam. This linebacker doesn't drop well and carry that seam to the safety good enough. We could dink it right over him. So, like, seeing that happen multiple times, and then on top of that, so those were the times where, like, they could have clearly scored touchdowns, and they didn't score. And I think on one of those drives, they got like I want to say they got like a field goal on one of them. One of them, they missed a field goal or something like that. But, like, think about, this is just how my mind works, but I'm like, damn, what if those were touchdowns? Like they should have been. Right. And the reason I think that is, like, well, better teams are going to score.
Tennessee's going to take advantage of those
100.
situations.
Yeah, they're not going to miss those passes. So that was pretty concerning for me. So I'm still a little worried about the secondary. I will say this, in the second half, they came out physical. On the outside, they were shedding blocks, and they were making plays on bubble screens and screen plays. Those are hard. Like, we all hated doing perimeter in practice. Like, bro, perimeter sucks, dog. Like, perimeter is not fun.
That is an annoying drill.
Yeah, but, like, that you do it because of situations like that. Like, it is annoying as hell, but, like, in college, you get put in those situations all the time. So, like, you got to be good. So, like, they responded well in the second half, and they did make some plays downfield also when they got tested on some deep routes. I think they closed the window for the quarterback or whatever, that, you know, so he couldn't complete the pass. But yeah, still weird. But to kind of go back again, another thing that worries me, but if you do look at, like, I think on their drive where they got a field goal in the second half, right? Because it was 20-13. I think they got a field goal in the second half. They got a field goal in the second half. If you look at that drive, I want to say they hit one of those the seam ball. Yeah, it's the same one. They end up hitting it, and they got points off of it. Yeah. And I'm like, bro, we got to clean that up. I don't know what the situation is. I haven't had a chance to, like, look at the tape yet and, like, see, like, what exactly what coverage we were in to, like, defending those, and, like, what we might need to be in. But anyway, we got to address that 100%. While I have you, I do want to – I guess the question is, did anybody else on the team, just in particular, is anybody standing out to you as an individual right now?
You know who I like, and you can talk to me more about this because it's a defensive guy. I don't know. Is his last name Fortune or Fortune?
I don't know.
They kept saying Fortune yesterday.
I think it's Fortune.
I like him, dude.
Yeah.
I like him. He's been there a while now, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's been there. He's been there for a bit.
I like him.
Yeah.
I like him. I don't know what it is. Every time I'm paying attention, he's always making a play.
Yeah.
He's always making the play. But I like him. I don't know the particulars. You're the secondary guy, but to me, from the outside looking in, he seems like somebody he's on his shit. Like he's taking care of business. I mean, he has his moments too, where I believe that deep ball was on him. If I'm correct, that when you talk, I could be totally wrong.
I think it was like a zone beater
scheme.
type deal.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like him. Overall, I think he's a hell of a player. I think every time I've seen him, he's been consistent.
Yeah, I think he's a pretty good player too. He's not my like major standout right now. I think he is really good at being in position. I think he has to work on playing the ball a little bit better.
Okay.
But he's solid. He's solid, 100%. He's solid. The Alexander kid on the other side, I think that's his last name. He made a pretty good play yesterday that I was pleased about.
Which number is he?
Oh, he was 18.
Yes, he's good too. Yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
he made a pretty good play. Like I think we have the talent at corner. I just think they got to get comfortable with, it's early in the season, so sometimes you got to grow into the season, and I hope they will. I think they will. Defensive, like I'm just trying to think of a defensive standout. It's just been the D line for me. Like they're all taking turns just being disruptive. So I don't necessarily have one particular player. I'll be honest. Like right now, I look at UTSA and there's not one player that's really separated themselves. Not even not even the usual suspects. Like Frank, they gave him player of the game yesterday, and I'm like, that's not you look at that stat line, you're like, that's not a typical Frank player of the game type of stat line. Yeah, 1 touchdown. He had, I think he was like 24 for 37 or something like that. Didn't throw for a ton of yards. And I was like,
it's odd. I'm telling you, it's just weird, right? Like, all looking at the offense is just weird. I don't know what it is.
And then, like, even some of our normal, like, standout players, and I'm like even Rashad Wisdom, like, he hasn't been bad. Of course not. Like, nobody on defense has been just awful. The defense has been good. But, like, I'm used to him making these huge, big standout plays game in and game out multiple times. You aren't really seeing that. You know what I'm saying? It's been a weird 2 games for us. But transitioning, I want to get your take on next week's game against Army.
Worried.
Why?
Worried. Because of last year, obviously. And because of everything we talked up to this point. Like, we're trying to find an identity on offense. I don't know about Frank's health going forward this next week. I definitely see the problems in the O-line next week. Like, and that's just me starting on offense. I'm sure you could talk about the secondary problem. Like, you don't know because they had a passing record on us last year,
Yeah,
right?
they threw the ball for like 300 and some yards. Army threw the ball for
That's nuts.
How the hell Army throw for 300 on us? Like, what?
And you can explain. I want to get your take. Excuse me, I'm going to ask you a question now. Like, is that has to be tough, those games for like a DB, right? Because like you going in and you see this team is so run heavy, so it's easy to fall asleep.
Yeah.
Like you have to be probably the most disciplined you've ever been.
Yeah.
During those games.
And I say this, I was talking about this last year, and I talked to Anis a little bit about this too. The crazy part about teams like Army is they capitalize on one mistake. They make you have to be disciplined every single play. Their running game, if you miss a gap, they're off to the races. If you miss a gap, if a linebacker doesn't fill a gap and the running back sees it, he's off to the races. That's literally how they and what they do and how they get you is now they force your corners to have to fill those gaps. Yeah, corners are not the greatest tacklers.
Right.
So they force your corners to have to, you think you're going to be a small corner out here, we're going to give this 6'8" tight end, and we're going to send him directly at you, and you take that block on. So if you don't, and you have to fill a gap every time. If they send a puller your way, you got to spill it.
Right.
Have no choice. And sometimes some people make business decisions.
Hit him with that Olay.
Yeah, exactly. But then when you think about the passing piece, when you go into game plan against a team like that, like as a corner, you're just like, because you have to do something different than what you're really there to do. We're there to cover. We're not there. We're there to make tackles and stuff too.
Right.
But like, we're not there to be in the trenches taking on linemen, bro.
Right.
Like we're all, 190 pounds out. You know what I'm saying? So like, you're not built to like take on these big linemen and be in the trenches like that. So whenever you play a game that causes you to have to prepare for that all week, well, now you're not doing as many one-on-ones anymore throughout practice leading into that game. What are you doing? You're doing run fits.
Right.
So now instead of – so, like, I can't remember exact teams. Whenever we would play teams like this, some of what we would do is whenever we had our one-on-one periods, like a lot of the time, like the receivers got to get their work. Mm-hmm. But they send, like, the guys who are in the rotation down to inside.
God damn it. Yeah.
So we'd have to go to inside and – we're not doing one-on-ones. Like, we'll get some in, but, like,
that's
they'll
like the
say,
main emphasis.
yeah, because they will tell us, like, they'll be like, yeah, you go get 2 reps and then go to inside.
Right.
And then you go to inside, get 4 reps, come back and get Bennett, and Bennett y'all swap, or Bennett you go and get Crosby, y'all swap. And that's how we would do, like, half, like, we reduce, like, half the amount of one-on-ones we practice throughout the game week. So, like, your mindset almost shifts to, like, okay, I'm not really worried about this receiver. Like, I can cover him. But it's like, oh, well, damn, you get in the game, that receiver's actually fast.
Yeah, right.
Or, like, dude, actually got a little bit of juice. I didn't know that. And, boom, you get up 300 yards. So, yeah, it's not an easy thing because you got to – I don't know. It's kind of a weird mindset shift. You go from you have to worry about covering these guys, and then a lot of the times too, for like the corners or whatever, you are on the outside with these receivers half the time, and they're doing all the game is taking place on the inside.
Yeah.
So you may go 2 or 3 drives, probably more than that against the Army, 3-4 drives, no action.
That's crazy.
And then drive 5 or 6. They doing a double move.
That's crazy.
A double move deep ball coming your way. It's like
it's crazy because, and it's in a way it's petrifying to me. My anxiety ain't working out right because you know it's coming eventually.
Oh yeah.
It's like ain't nothing happening right now, but it's like, dog. I'm sure in the back of your head you're like, dog, when it's like this thing eventually they gonna take a shot.
Nothing feels better than like it would, especially like whenever we played heavy double move teams. Back in the day, whenever we was playing or whatever, it almost make you hesitant a little bit on like jumping something because you're like, man, they do double moves a lot, bro. You got to be careful. But what I've just kind of learned by experience is if they'll try, every team is the teams that do like double moves, they're gonna try it twice. They're gonna try it one time, and they're probably not gonna throw it. But they just want to see how you play it.
Yeah.
And if you cover it too well, like they'll just look at the way you cover it. Like if you cover it too well because you're sitting back in the zone, they may not do it again. But let's say you cover it and you come down, and even if you cover it well, but they just see you be aggressive, and you may cover it well and they may not throw it, but you know they're gonna come back.
Come back, hell yeah.
Because this happened to me against Georgia State, and they scored on my. So we playing Georgia State. This was what was this, like a sophomore year or whatever?
Yeah.
And they had that really good. He ended up going to the league, but I was like covering their like top receiver or whatever on this particular play. He was on the field side, and he did a double move early in the game, and I was all over it. I was like, yes. So in my mind, I'm like, oh. And the way I covered him, like, oh, they're not gonna do it again. Some bitch's next drive. And he got me good too. Like, it was a come back and go, and they were successful. But like, yeah, that whole situation, it's just a mind fuck. It's just a mind fuck. Like, I don't know. So anyway, against Army, what kind of scares me a little bit for our defense is that they know what happened last year. Mm-hmm. That Army put up 38 points on us. Like, that's not great. And they did it through the air.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't know. There's probably going to be some demons in the head, like, going into this game week in preparation for them. Like, defense got a point to prove. They've been great. That's the kind of scary part, too. They've been so good the first 2 games. I'm like, oh, my God. Now, like, of course, we have to play an Army team where their offense is weird and, like, unconventional, and we have to kind of solve that. But I want to get your take on this. Here's what I'm worried about more than even the defensive side of things. They put up we had to score 41 points to beat them last year. Let's say we were called on to even score half of that to beat them this year. I am not confident that I'm just not confident in our offense right now to where it's like if they gotta go in and score 31 points to win a game, can we do that? I don't know. I'm not confident yet.
So far with the history of this season, I say no. Honestly. But this is why it's gonna be on you guys. I feel like this game. I mean, I hate to say it like that, but you know what I mean. Like y'all are gonna be the most important. Defense is gonna be the most important factor,
right,
in my opinion, in this game, because I could see our defense stepping up and keeping them to a minimum with how great they've been so far. I mean, our offense, like I said, it's so up in the air. Like, we don't know health wise, we don't know identity wise. Like, it's so many factors that it's just big old question marks on right now. So I think the defense is going to be crucial. This is going to be the most crucial game for the defense thus far.
Right.
Just because, you know, like we talked about the struggling quarterback, but now we got the struggling offense as a whole. Like, let's help the offense. And, I mean, that's how it is. Like, you know, the defense, when defense gets a turnover in good territory, like, it's the offense's job to score. Yeah. I feel like this game, it needs to be, like, an emphasis on the defense of keeping these points to a minimum just because of these offensive struggles and struggling to find an identity right now.
Speaking of offensive struggles, and we can wrap after this, but I did want to get your take on this side of things. Frank's health.
Mm-hmm.
In a situation where he went out and then he came back in after 2 plays and then got hurt and had to go back to the locker room. So there's a lot of, like, talk and I just seen a lot on Twitter about, like, why did that happen? Like, did they not check him out? Like, what's the situation there? And I think we both kind of know how that works. Like, if it's not like a concussion or anything like that,
right,
the doc is gonna he's gonna kind of ask the player, like, how do you feel? Like, how are you gonna be able to manage your pain? Like, are you good? And if that player says yes, then they're probably gonna allow them to go back in the game. They'll be cleared to go back in. So I'm assuming Frank said yes.
Mm-hmm.
But what's kind of concerning is QB2.
Yeah.
And like, what if Frank has to miss some time?
Right.
We haven't seen much from Eddie Lee Marburger, but I don't know. Do you? I guess, what do you think in that situation? Like, if Frank goes down, is our season just over with? We should just pack up? And I'm not trying to speak that into existence, by the way. It's just something that's a reality, considering how much he's getting hit and our offensive line not being the strongest right now. He's gonna take a lot of punishment.
I don't think the season's over with, but going back to the offensive coordinator, he's going to have to adjust. You got to realize this quarterback isn't Frank.
Right.
So I don't know what that means. I don't know what that entails. Getting the ball out of his hands quick, making easy passes, maybe a couple shots, 1 shot per quarter or something. I don't know what it means. Or focusing more on Barnes, so letting him be the workhorse for that offense. Right. His carries might have to get up to around average of 26 a game if that happens.
Right. You know what I feel like we haven't done, just like as a program in general, like just really well, at least recently, I feel like, and we haven't had to, but like, well, we have had to, but when you think about NFL, a lot of the times they say the most important player on the team, or the most controversial and most important player of the team, is the backup quarterback. And I think, I kind of brushed off some of the discourse around the QB2 prior to the season, because there was a lot of questions coming into the podcast about QB2, and I'm like, we got Frank. Like, I kind of don't care right now. But like just seeing him being banged up, he came into the season with injuries already. I guess my thing when Eddie Lee got into the game, I'm like, we'll know what the coaches or how much confidence they have in him based on the way they play call.
Right.
And whenever he got in the game, they just basically gave up on these plays, just ran the ball, and then they gave him like one time where he threw like something quick and it was incomplete. And I'm like, that's scary.
Yeah.
Because that kind of shows me like we can't run our offense with him at QB. At least our offense, our coordinator don't think we can.
Right.
That's worrisome.
Yeah. I'll say this. I talked to Frank. I don't want to disclose what happened, but I don't think it's as serious as people are going to think. I don't want to disclose before they do the actual report and everything. But I think he's going to be okay going forward. But two things. One, I wasn't a fan of how he just got. I was actually very upset when I saw him go right back out there and get hurt again. I had to walk off for a second because I was like, why is he in the game? Like, as a competitor, you know this and I know this. When you got adrenaline going and you a competitor, it's like, you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. Fuck it. Let me go back out there.
Yeah.
Like you ain't worried about the injury. And this is a guy who's had, all these surgeries and all this injury history. I was a little upset, personally. After talking to him and realizing what occurred, I was like, okay, I can kind of understand. Still a little upset, but can kind of understand.
Yeah.
But with the other quarterback, I don't know if – because, I noticed that too. The play calling was very conservative when he was in.
Yeah. And to be fair, it's like that like in most situations.
Yeah.
But whenever I don't know, it just didn't feel like it was I didn't feel like they were confident in like, okay, this guy can go and like run our offense. Like I think about your boys, the 49ers.
Okay.
They don't give a shit about who's their quarterback.
No. We gonna do what we gotta do.
Those guys are always are they not always prepared?
Always.
They're always prepared.
Always. That's because Shanahan, Kyle gonna dial up some stuff. He's like, I don't care. He could put us back there at quarterback and win 5 games.
But here's the thing though, like I think it speaks volumes to somebody who can put together a game plan that more than just your starting quarterback can. Obviously, you make you adjust your game plan based on the talent that you have. But there should be a base set of things to where like, if our quarterback does go down, we got someone that can come in that can like, still give us offense.
Right.
And I don't know. It just it worries me a little bit, to be honest, and it makes me feel like, what happens next year? Are we going to go into the portal and try to get somebody, or are we going to be okay with saying like?
Well, look, you know what? Another thing too, though, Star, that I also considered, and a lot of people might say I'm bailing them out, but I don't think so. Another thing I thought about was the OC could also be very in a state of shock at that moment. Like, you have your quarterback went down. He went right back in the game, went down again. You don't know the severity of the injury, and it's like, oh, shit, what just happened? Right. So it might be like, let's just, and I think it was close to the half at that time. Yeah. I believe, late in the second quarter. So it's like, you're like, let's just make it out of here alive. So I'm going to cut him a little slack when it comes to that with the play calling there, but I honestly don't know. I haven't seen enough of the kid.
I feel that. The shock part is bullshit to me because he's paid a lot of money. I'm just being honest. He's paid a lot of money to be emotionless sometimes. Like, that's just a fact.
But he's human. He's human.
I get it. But here's my thing, though. At the end of the day, it's at a pivotal point of the game where momentum is shifting toward Texas State. Mm-hmm. We can't afford to pout there. So, like, we're around the middle of the field, if I'm not mistaken. I think Frank was able to get the ball. I think this is when he, like, threw the ball up to Ola Kellogg. And I think we had, like, a first down.
Yes, that crazy.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, well, we got a backup that's going to come in. Like, let's not just give away this possession.
Right,
you know what I'm saying? Like, and I just, in my mind, I'm like, we've been struggling to move the ball, and we got a little bit of momentum. Like, we're near field goal range. Like, let's play call for that. And I don't know. I'm worried about that. But it's weird, man. I am worried about this season. I had high expectations for the team. I think JT Clark did like get on the field yesterday.
Really?
Like I seen somebody tweet it. I must have missed it. But he went on the field. He got on the field to do something, and I was like, "Oh, okay, that's cool." He didn't get a target or anything, and I think it was like 1 or 2 plays or something. But I believe he got on the field based on what I was seeing on Twitter. So I hope when we get him back, our offense starts to look a little bit more like what we've been accustomed to. But yeah, it's just not been great. But yeah, we got a wrap here. Bro, appreciate you for doing this. Appreciate you for coming down and being on the pod. Make sure you guys smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. Almost at that 500 goal. Got about 15 or so before we get there. So I appreciate any love you guys show the channel. But we are outie. Roadrunners Unfiltered signing off.